I never imagined I'd be the one sharing this on Reddit, pouring my heart out to a bunch of strangers. But life has a way of cornering you in ways you never saw coming. I'm Ben, and I've been married to Lily for 10 years. We have two beautiful daughters, and from the outside, it all looked pretty much perfect. The house, the family, everything glowing like a picture-perfect life. But lately, something's been off. Really off. Lily started pulling away, acting distant and cold, the kind of cold where you know something's wrong, but you can't quite figure out what. At first, I thought it might be the pressure from her job. She's got this high-ranking position at a marketing firm. Meanwhile, I made the choice a few years ago to step back from my career and stay home with the kids. Yeah, I know. The guy who gave up his job for diaper duty. Go ahead, lo. But honestly, I didn't mind. I loved being with the girls, and I thought Lily and I were in this together. A real partnership. But boy, was I wrong. It all started one morning when she accidentally left her phone on the kitchen counter. She'd been getting more secretive with it lately, always turning the screen away when I was around. But I never pressed her. Dumb, right? But on that morning, she left it behind, and something inside me, call it instinct, told me to check it. So I did, and there it was, as clear as day. Messages from a guy named Ryan. And these weren't just friendly work texts. They were packed with enough emotion to make me sick to my stomach. One of the messages read, "Last night was amazing," followed by a bunch of heart emojis. Another one said, "Can't wait until we're together again." It felt like I had been punched in the gut, and all I could do was stare at the screen, feeling my world crumble around me. But I didn't confront her. Not right away. That would have been too easy for her. Too damn easy. So I sat with it, let it stew in my mind for a while, and decided I needed to know more. Was it just this Ryan guy? Was this some quick fling? Or was it something deeper? And most of all, what was she planning? I hired a private investigator, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. I gave him what little information I had, handed him Lily's schedule, and let him do the dirty work. The next few weeks were some of the longest of my life. Every time Lily smiled at me or kissed our daughters goodnight, I couldn't help but wonder how deep her betrayal really went. How long had she been living this double life? And why was I the last one to find out? Turns out, she'd been sleeping with Ryan for months. The investigator showed me pictures of them at hotels, at restaurants, sneaking around like a couple of horny teenagers. But it wasn't just physical. Their texts were full of plans for the future. They were talking about moving to Europe together, taking my girls with them, and leaving me behind. That's when the real rage hit. I could handle the cheating. Hell, I'd been living in denial for months, but to plan to take my kids from me? That crossed a line. That was war. But I knew better than to lose my cool. Lily thought she had me fooled. Thought she could play me like a fool. So I played along, pretending everything was fine at home, all while she kept up her little affair. I even made an effort to be more loving, more present, just to keep her guard down. I needed time. Time to set my trap. Here's where things took a turn, though. You see, it wasn't just Ryan. There was another guy involved, Chris. Another damn colleague of hers. She'd been stringing him along for emotional support while using Ryan for the other stuff. Apparently, one guy wasn't enough for her. So, I started working behind the scenes. I knew Ryan had a bit of a reputation for being a player. And Lily, well, she'd always been a little insecure about whether he was actually loyal. So, I made sure to plant a seed in her mind that Ryan might be seeing someone else. A few whispers in the right ears. Some anonymous texts to Lily. Just enough to make her paranoid. And it worked. She started acting off, always checking her phone and getting frustrated with Ryan. Meanwhile, I was playing the perfect husband, smiling through the bullshit, just waiting for the right moment to strike. It didn't take long for that moment to come. I found a way to turn Chris against Ryan, making both of them suspicious of Lily's involvement with the other. I started slipping in fake messages here and there, hinting at jealousy, just enough to get both of these idiots questioning her loyalty. I was setting the stage for the implosion of Lily's entire little world, and she had no idea. It was only a matter of time before her whole world came crashing down. But I had to be patient. This needed to be done right. Every single detail had to be solid. No room for mistakes. When I finally made my move, there would be no going back. Where was I? Oh yeah, the slow burn. I continued playing the role of the clueless husband, while Lily's lies slowly started unraveling in front of me. The atmosphere in our home became suffocating. I could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to cut with a knife. I'm sure she felt it too, but she had no idea what was causing it. She probably wondered if I was catching on, or if I was just as oblivious as she hoped. But I kept up the act, watching her squirm, seeing her second-guess every little thing. It became a twisted kind of entertainment. I knew what was happening behind closed doors, while she thought she was hiding it all from me. The private investigator kept feeding me information, text messages, photos, even recordings of Lily's private conversations. The worst of it, though, were the things she said about me when she thought I wasn't listening. If I had any respect left for her, it would have disappeared in an instant. The way she talked about me to Ryan, like I was some dull, invisible man she couldn't wait to get away from. She complained about how I'd lost my edge and wasn't the man she married anymore. All the while, I was the one holding down the fort at home, raising our daughters, managing the household, making the sacrifices so she could pursue her career. But to her, I was nothing. Less than nothing. Fine. She didn't know it yet, but I was done playing nice. It wasn't just the affair with Ryan anymore. No, Lily had been pulling away from me more and more, even spending less time at home. The girls were starting to notice it too. Our eldest, Mia, started asking why Mommy wasn't around as much. That stung. It stung more than anything she could have done to me. It wasn't just the cheating now. It was the effect it was having on our kids. That's when I knew I couldn't keep pretending anymore. It was time to act. I couldn't let this drag on, especially with her planning to take my kids halfway across the world to live with that scumbag. The situation finally came to a boiling point one night after the girls were in bed. Lily came home late again. No real explanation, just the usual excuse about work and client dinners. I played along, asked her how her night was, smiled like an idiot. But inside, I was absolutely fuming. I was done. I couldn't help myself anymore. I needed to push her, make her sweat. So, I asked her if she ever felt guilty about leaving the girls so much. Her eyes flickered for a second, like I'd hit a nerve. But she quickly covered it up. "Oh, Ben, please. I'm doing this for us. You know how demanding my job is." I nodded like I believed her, but then I couldn't resist. "Yeah, but it's starting to feel like you're not just working late anymore. It's like you don't even want to be here." She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. "What are you getting at?" I shrugged, casual as ever. "I don't know. Just feels like we're drifting apart. Don't you think?" She turned away from me, clearly uncomfortable. Good. I wanted her to feel that way. But I wasn't about to show my cards yet. Not until I was ready. "Maybe we should talk about this," I added, as casually as I could. "You know, about where this is all headed. I don't want us to lose each other." That hit her like a ton of bricks. I could see the hesitation in her eyes, probably wondering if I knew more than I was letting on. She stayed silent for a while before forcing a smile. "Yeah, maybe we should." It was so fake, so rehearsed, I almost wanted to laugh in her face. She didn't have the faintest clue. I was already 10 steps ahead of her. I let the conversation fizzle out, knowing I needed to hold off until I had more leverage. Here's the thing, though. I wasn't just going after Lily. No, I was going to take down both of her precious boyfriends, Ryan and Chris, too. The next day, I set everything into motion. I had more than enough dirt on Lily to ruin her life, but that wasn't enough. I wanted her to experience the exact same betrayal, the same heartbreak, the same gut-wrenching pain I'd been living with for weeks. So, I reached out to a guy who worked with Ryan, a mutual acquaintance of ours who had a reputation for being a gossip. I made sure he overheard a conversation about Ryan seeing someone else behind Lily's back. It didn't take long for word to get back to her. She was on edge, constantly checking her phone, looking over her shoulder. Paranoia set in. She started grilling Ryan about where he was, who he was with. Watching her spin out of control was almost satisfying. Meanwhile, I was feeding Chris just enough information to keep him suspicious too. It didn't take much. He was already insecure about his relationship with her. Before long, both of them were second-guessing everything. Lily's world was crumbling, and she had no idea I was the one pulling all the strings. But just when I thought I had everything in place, I found out something that almost derailed everything. Lily had already hired a divorce lawyer. She'd beaten me to the punch. That's when I realized just how far ahead she thought she was. She was planning to file first, paint me as the unfit husband, and walk away with full custody of the kids, leaving me with nothing. The house, the savings, the girls, they were all part of her scheme to push me completely out of her life. It wasn't just about leaving me anymore, it was about ruining me. I could see it clear as day. If I didn't act fast, she'd have the upper hand. I couldn't let her file for divorce first, not with the way the courts almost always favor the mother in custody battles, especially when she had a lawyer in her corner. Things could get ugly real quick. So, I picked up the phone and called my lawyer. I laid it all out, every sordid detail, every piece of proof I had about her affairs. I told him we needed to move fast. We filed for divorce the very next morning. The look on Lily's face when she got served, it was priceless. She came home that night, fuming with rage, her anger barely contained as soon as the girls were tucked in bed. She stormed over to me. "What the hell, Ben? You filed for divorce?" she exclaimed in shock. I leaned back in my chair, trying to keep my cool, but my insides were buzzing with the rush of what I was about to say. "Yeah, I thought it was time. Don't you?" Her eyes burned with fury, but she tried to play it calm. "You're making a mistake. I've already talked to a lawyer. You won't win this." I stood up, walked over to her, and looked her dead in the eye. "Lily, you don't even know what game you're playing." She blinked, taken off guard for a split second. That's when I knew I had her. Everything she'd worked so hard to control was about to crumble, and she had no idea just how deep she was in. But she was about to find out. The shock on Lily's face when I said those words, the blank, confused look, was worth every ounce of hell I'd been through. She had no clue that I was holding all the cards. For just a moment, I thought she might break down and confess everything, but I quickly realized she wasn't the type to give up that easily. No, Lily wasn't going to go down without a fight. "What the hell are you talking about, Ben?" she snapped, her voice rising. "You think you could just file for divorce and walk away with everything? You're delusional." I crossed my arms, keeping my posture steady while inside. I was fired up. "I know everything, Lily. I've got the evidence. I've got witnesses. You've been cheating on me with Ryan and Chris." Her eyes widened just for a second before she quickly regained her composure, her anger flaring. "You don't know what you're talking about," she shot back. That's when I pulled out my phone, started scrolling through the photos. "You want to see them?" I asked, my voice cold and calculated. "I've got pictures, text messages, video recordings, you name it. You thought I was too stupid to figure it out. Thought I wouldn't catch on." She froze. I could almost see the wheels turning in her head, trying to figure out how to talk her way out of it. But there was no way out. She knew it. Her anger flared again, but now it was more defensive. "You think this is all my fault? We haven't had a real marriage in years, Ben. You stopped caring about me. About us." I let out a bitter laugh. "Wow, that's rich. So, you had to find comfort in the arms of two other men because I wasn't good enough for you anymore." I scoffed. "Give me a break, Lily. I've been here raising our daughters, holding this family together, while you ran off and did whatever you wanted. But don't twist this around," I added, cutting her off. "You don't understand." She choked up a little, but I wasn't buying it. "You never understood. I didn't ask for this life," she continued, her voice trembling. "I didn't want to be stuck in this boring suburban hell with someone who has no ambition." My blood boiled. I wasn't about to let her turn this into a pity party for herself. "You're unbelievable. You've been planning this from the start, haven't you? Running off to Europe with Ryan, taking the girls, leaving me behind to rot." Her face drained of color. That was it, the nail in the coffin. She realized I knew everything, and for a moment, she stood there stunned, as though the weight of her own lies had just crashed down on her. But I could tell she wasn't done fighting. Not yet. "You think you're going to win this, Ben?" she hissed. "You think you'll get custody? The courts always favor the mother. And I've already got a lawyer who's going to bury you in that courtroom. You'll end up with nothing." I leaned forward, my voice low. "Maybe, but you forget one thing, Lily. I'm not the only one with something to lose here." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" I unlocked my phone and showed her the screen. It was a text message thread between Ryan and Chris, the two men she thought she could juggle without them finding out about each other. But I'd made sure they both knew. "Ryan and Chris aren't too happy with you right now," I said. "When you're juggling two men at once, it's no surprise that things fall apart. And trust me, neither of them is thrilled about it. In fact, I'm certain they'd both jump at the chance to take the stand in court and share their side of the story about your little extracurricular activities. The expression on Lily's face shifted to something I'd never seen before. Raw fear. Not anger, not frustration, just fear. It was like she realized she'd been caught, cornered with no way out. "You wouldn't," she whispered, her voice barely audible, trembling with anxiety. I shrugged, not an ounce of sympathy in me. "Why wouldn't I? You think I care about you or anything you do anymore? I'm done, Lily. I've got nothing left to lose except you. But you've got everything at stake. Your reputation, your job, the kids, everything." I could see her panic rising, her breath quickening, the look in her eyes telling me she was spiraling. She was losing control. "Ben, please," she pleaded, her voice softer, as if trying to pull some last-ditch effort. "We don't have to do this." I smirked bitterly. "Oh, we absolutely do." She stepped closer, trying to soften her tone, clearly shifting to a new tactic, hoping to appeal to some lingering sense of compassion. "Think about the girls. Do you really want them to see this mess? Do you want them stuck in the middle of all this chaos?" Her words hit me harder than I wanted to admit. She was right in a way. The girls didn't deserve this. They didn't deserve to be dragged into a war between their parents. But there was no way I was backing down now. Not after everything she had done, the lies, the betrayal. "I'm doing this for them," I said quietly, my voice steady but full of conviction. "I'm not going to let you take them from me. I'm not going to stand by while you run off with some guy and pretend everything's fine." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I wasn't fooled. It was just another act. She was trapped, and she knew it. I had all the cards now. I had the evidence to win. And if she kept pushing me, I was ready to destroy everything she held dear. She took a shaky breath, barely whispering, "Fine. What do you want?" There it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. She was finally starting to understand she wasn't going to walk away with it all. "I want full custody of the kids," I said firmly, locking eyes with her. "I want the house, and I want you to walk away without trying to take everything from me." She opened her mouth to argue, but I didn't let her get a word out. "Don't even think about fighting me on this," I warned. "You know I'll bring Ryan and Chris into court if I have to. You'll be humiliated. And believe me, they'll both be more than happy to turn on you if it means saving themselves." Her mouth snapped shut, her jaw tensing as the reality of the situation hit her. I could see her waging an internal battle. She wanted to fight, but she knew deep down that she was defeated. "Not this time." "Okay," she muttered, her voice bitter, resigned. "I'll sign the papers." But I wasn't done. "And one more thing," I added, making sure she heard every word. "You tell the girls the truth. You explain to them exactly why this is happening. They deserve to know the reality of what's been going on." She glared at me, but I didn't care. After everything she had put us through, this was the bare minimum she could do. "Fine," she spat. "But don't think for a second that this is over, Ben. You might have won this round, but we'll see how it plays out in court." I didn't need to respond. I already knew I had won. No matter what threats she threw my way, I was the one holding the power. As she stormed out, a sense of calm washed over me, one I hadn't felt in a long time. This wasn't over, but I was finally in control. I'd played the long game, and now it was paying off. I knew Lily wouldn't just give up, even though she'd agreed to the terms. She was still plotting, trying to figure out how to screw me over one last time. And sure enough, the next day, she met with her lawyer again. How did I know? Because my private investigator was still keeping tabs on her. He had been gathering every bit of dirt I could use to bury her if she tried anything. The day after that showdown, I got a call from my lawyer. He told me that Lily's lawyer had reached out, and they were preparing for a serious custody battle. Apparently, Lily had a change of heart overnight and now wanted to drag me through the mud. She was counting on the court siding with her because she was the mother. She was planning to paint me as a lazy stay-at-home dad who didn't contribute financially, someone who couldn't provide for the kids. Typical Lily. She always thought she could twist the situation to her favor. But she had no idea just how deep I had dug into her double life. And it wasn't just Ryan and Chris. Through my investigator, I found out she had been seeing a few other guys on the side. Lily wasn't just a cheater. She was a serial cheater. I sat down with my lawyer and laid everything out. The texts, the photos, the videos, the recorded conversations. We were ready to bring the fight to her. If she wanted to take it to court, I was prepared to scorch the earth. A week passed, and the tension in the house grew unbearable. Lily was avoiding me, barely even meeting my gaze. But every time she did, I could feel the burning hatred in her eyes. She was planning something. I could sense it. And then, when I least expected it, she dropped the bomb. The next morning, while I was making breakfast for the girls, Lily walked in and dropped a bombshell. "I'm moving out," she said, her voice flat and matter-of-fact, like she was telling me she was going to grab some groceries. I found an apartment. I looked up from the stove, trying to keep my face neutral. "Really? That quick?" She didn't meet my eyes. She just shrugged. "Yeah, Ryan is helping me. We're moving in together." There it was, no hesitation, no remorse. She was all in with Ryan. No attempt to hide it, no care for the damage it would cause. Just like that, she was ready to walk out of everything we'd built, abandoning the life we shared and our daughters like they were nothing more than an inconvenience. I kept my voice steady, though I was seething inside. "What about the girls? You planning on taking them with you?" She finally turned to face me, sighing as if this was all so burdensome. "We'll figure it out in court, Ben. But you can't give them what I can. You don't have a job. You don't have any income. How are you going to provide for them?" I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my anger under control. She was playing dirty, as expected, but I wasn't going to let her bait me into a fight. I had to stay calm, focus on what mattered. "They're my daughters, Lily," I said coldly. "I've been the one raising them while you've been off chasing every guy you could find. I'm not letting you take them away from me." She rolled her eyes dismissively, but I could see the anger flicker in her eyes. "We'll see what the court thinks of that." With that, she turned and left the room, leaving me standing there, fists clenched and feeling like I might snap. But I knew I had to keep it together. I wouldn't let her win. A few days later, the court hearing began. My lawyer had filed everything. My case for full custody, evidence of Lily's multiple affairs, and her plans to run off to Europe with Ryan and the girls. I was on edge, my nerves eating me alive, but I was ready for this. I'd spent weeks gathering evidence, preparing every argument, and rehearsing what I needed to say. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. When Lily walked in with her lawyer, I couldn't help but notice how she strutted in, looking like she was attending a gala. She was dressed like she was trying to make a statement, playing the role of the successful, glamorous career woman. Ryan wasn't with her, probably smart enough to avoid being dragged into the mess he helped create. But even without him there, I could feel his presence hanging over the whole room like a dark cloud, as though he was there with her in spirit. The first part of the hearing was a nightmare. Her lawyer went on and on about how she was the primary breadwinner, how I had no job, no income, and how I couldn't possibly provide the stable, supportive environment the girls needed. They painted me as a failure, someone who abandoned his career to be a stay-at-home dad, incapable of supporting his own children. I wanted to lose it, to scream at the injustice of it all, but I held my ground. I didn't let them see me sweat. I let them spin their lies, because I knew what was coming next. Then it was my lawyer's turn. He stood up, calm and confident, and started presenting the evidence. One by one, he laid out Lily's affairs, first with Ryan, then Chris, then the other man. He showed the court the text messages, the photos, the receipts. He painted a picture of a woman who was not only unfaithful, but reckless enough to plan a future with someone else. Someone who wasn't even willing to stand by her in the courtroom. And then came the real kicker. We called Ryan to the stand. The second his name was called, I saw Lily's face go pale. She hadn't known he would be a witness. Ryan took the stand, trying to keep it together, but he was clearly sweating bullets. Under questioning, he confessed to the affair, admitted that he and Lily had been together for months. But the real blow came when he admitted that Lily had been planning to take the kids and leave me behind. It was a devastating blow to Lily's case. By the time Ryan stepped down, Lily looked like she'd been hit by a freight train. And I wasn't done yet. Next up was Chris. The same thing, he confirmed everything just like Ryan. And by the time he was finished, Lily's entire defense had crumbled to dust. The judge remained neutral, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. He wasn't buying Lily's perfect mother act anymore. When the hearing ended, Lily stormed out of the courtroom, her face twisted in fury. I followed my lawyer out, feeling a strange mix of exhaustion and relief. The battle wasn't over yet, but today had been a huge victory. Lily knew it, and the best part? She'd done it to herself. All the lies, all the manipulation, it had all come crashing down on her. The weight of it felt like a huge burden lifting off my shoulders. As I walked out of the courthouse, I felt for the first time in months like I was finally getting my life back. But I knew this wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. There was still more to fight for. More battles ahead. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready. The final hearing was set for a few weeks later, and the tension in the house between Lily and me only grew. We still had to live under the same roof, which made every day feel like a pressure cooker. I counted down the days, but I knew better than to relax. Lily was cornered, but she wasn't done yet. I could feel she was planning something. I just didn't know what. The night before the final hearing, she came into the living room where I was sitting, nursing a glass of whiskey, trying to relax. She stood in the doorway for a moment, just looking at me, and I could tell she was preparing herself for something. "Ben," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Can we talk?" I raised an eyebrow, instantly wary. "Talk about what, Lily? You've made your choices already." She sighed, her shoulders slumping as she sank into a chair across from me. Her gaze dropped to the floor, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she broke the silence. "I don't want this to get any uglier than it already has. We don't need to tear each other apart in court tomorrow." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Now you want to talk about keeping things civil? After everything you've done, after trying to rip the girls away from me?" She flinched at my words, but I wasn't about to let her play the victim. Not this time. "Look," she said, her voice strained, almost pleading. "I know I screwed up, but we can still figure something out. For the kids' sake, we don't have to drag this out in court." It was the final desperate plea. She was trying to backpedal, trying to salvage something for herself, but I could see through it. It wasn't about the kids. It was about her image, about trying to save what little dignity she had left. I leaned forward, setting my glass down with a quiet thud. "You're only saying this because you know you've already lost tomorrow. You know the judge saw right through your act. You're just trying to hang on to whatever scraps of control you can, but it's too late. You made your choice, Lily." Her face reddened with anger, and she stood up, fists clenched, her body rigid with frustration. "You think you're some kind of saint, don't you?" she snapped. "Like you've never messed up. You know what? I wouldn't have done any of this if you hadn't checked out of our marriage years ago." There it was again. She was shifting the blame, trying to make me the villain. But I wasn't going to let her rewrite history. "I didn't check out, Lily," I said calmly, my voice low but steady. "I was here. Every damn day. You're the one who decided to seek comfort in other men. You're the one who thought you could have it all. The career, the affairs, and the family. But you can't. It doesn't work that way." She stood there for a long moment, breathing heavily, her eyes flashing with fury. Then, without saying another word, she spun around and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. I stayed frozen for a moment, staring at the door she had just slammed. It felt like a line had been drawn in the sand. The end of something that had been coming for a long time. The next morning, we were back in court. I sat there, calm, collected, while Lily's lawyers scrambled to salvage whatever dignity she could for her. But it was clear from the start that the judge wasn't going to buy any of it. My lawyer presented the final pieces of evidence. More texts, more photos, more proof of Lily's infidelities. And then the video recording. The one where Lily casually discussed her plans to leave me behind and take the kids with her. The judge's expression remained impassive, but I could tell from the way he spoke that we had won. After reviewing the evidence, the judge began, his voice measured. "It is clear that Mrs. Mitchell has not acted in the best interest of the children. Her extramarital affairs and her plans to relocate the children without Mr. Mitchell's consent are deeply troubling." He paused for a moment before continuing. "Therefore, I am granting full custody of the children to Mr. Mitchell, with supervised visitation rights for Mrs. Mitchell. Additionally, Mr. Mitchell will retain ownership of the family home, and the division of assets will reflect Mrs. Mitchell's lack of contribution to the household. I barely heard the rest of the words as they spilled from the judge's mouth. All I could think about was the fact that I had won. The fight was over. I had fought for my daughters, fought for my life, and come out victorious. Lily sat there, staring at the judge as if she couldn't comprehend what was happening. But it was real. It was done. As we left the courtroom, Lily didn't look at me. She walked out with her lawyer, her posture stiff, her head held high. But I could see the cracks. I could see the way her shoulders sagged the moment she was out of everyone's sight. She was crumbling inside, and there was no one to blame but herself. Back at the house, I began packing up her things. It felt surreal, almost like I was in a dream. The end of an era. The end of a war that had dragged on for far too long. The girls were with my parents for the week, so I had the house to myself. I went through her clothes, her makeup, her jewelry, all the little remnants of a life we'd once shared. I couldn't help but feel a mixture of emotions. Relief, anger, sadness. But above all, I felt a deep sense of freedom. Later that evening, I sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey in hand, reflecting on everything that had led to this moment. The lies, the deceit, the months of pretending nothing was wrong while I quietly prepared my counterattack. It had been brutal, but in the end, I had come out stronger. I had fought for my daughters, and I had won. I don't know what Lily's future holds, and frankly, I don't care. She'll have her supervised visits with the girls, but maybe, just maybe, she'll eventually realize what she threw away. As for me, I'm moving on. I've got a new life ahead of me, a fresh start with my girls by my side, and that's all that matters. This whole ordeal has taught me one thing. Revenge isn't about destroying the other person. It's about taking back control of your own life, standing up for yourself, and reclaiming what's yours. I didn't just get even with Lily. I took back everything she tried to strip away from me, my dignity, my family, my future. And that's the real victory. Thanks for following my story through all of this. Reddit, this chapter of my life is finally closed, and I'm ready to turn the page.